Hello and greetings. This is Alkesh Nanavati, and today I'm going to talk about particles inside of Fusion. Eric Westphal of Eyeon Software has done a series of tutorials for Fusion, and you can find them on Fusion's channel, Eyeon's channel on YouTube. And one of them was about particles, so that inspired me to explore particles a little further and see what else can we do with the particles, and there is a lot. So the very first one I'll bring is this castle. It's Squires Castle in Ohio, and I took this picture in the summertime, and I wanted to change the season to more like fall, not just by doing some color correction, but also having some leaves on the ground here, and also some leaves falling. And what I was able to do using just Fusion is this, and if you play this, you can see there are leaves falling off the top here, and there are leaves also on the ground. And all of this was done using particles, and we're going to take a look at how to do that very shortly. Very easy. You didn't even need to leave Fusion at that point. So if you have something that you need to do very quickly at the compositing stage, and don't want to bring in leaves from Maya or 3ds Max or any other 3D packages, you can easily just create them inside of Fusion for most part. I also did some sky replacement here, but that was just for my own sake. And the camera is not moving in this case, but you can easily create a 3D shot by just doing masking around the castle and around the ground, and create some 3D layout inside of Fusion, and that would work just fine. We are also going to walk through another comp where I was compositing this. This one is actually a 360 frame shot. So this is a model chess set from Harry Potter. It's just lying on the floor here, and it's nicely done. It has very good details, and I composited that with this image, which is inside the Squires Castle, and both of them together, and using particles inside of Fusion, I was able to composite something like this. Now, this entire shot was done inside of Fusion, so I have not left Fusion at all for any other work. All the particles that you see here, the fire on both sides of the chessboard, the fire you see on the wall here, and also these particles coming in by way of some sort of a mist or smoke coming in through the window. Everything was done inside of Fusion, and also in this case the camera is moving, as you can see, and that motion was also done inside of Fusion by using the 3D space of Fusion. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on 3D space, because you have seen that a few times that I have done in my YouTube channel. So this time I'm going to focus just on the particles. And after that we'll walk through another comp, which is this one here. I took this shot of just driving on the road using my Panasonic GH2, and I created some leaves on the ground and made this shot here. So you have leaves, and you can also see a little bit of shadow here. And thanks to the participants on the forum for Fusion, which is Pixfly, I was able to learn how to do the shadow effect. So I did this, and then I wanted to take this even to the next level by just going crazy with some effects. So I created a dirt road again inside of Fusion, and also created a Jeep here. Let me just increase the size of this viewport so you can see it. Have a Jeep here that's on fire, and this is actually an image plane. It's not a 3D model of the Jeep, but the camera is going in such a way that at least I couldn't tell the difference here between an image plane and a 3D object in terms of the parallax. Maybe you can. I also created some dirt on dirt road, some of the dust that some vehicle had just passed by, so you can see that we are actually going through the puffs of dust. And I have 3D fog applied to this shot also, and I did the sky replacement, as you can see. So all of this was done inside of Fusion, and the only software that I use outside of Fusion was Synthesize, because I needed some track for this shot. So we'll walk through that, and that's the comp here that you can see. The first one here is just the leaves and the shadow, and then here is the one that I did for this shot here with the dirt road. But before we do that, let's just see if we can very quickly use particle system to create leaves on the ground and leaves falling from the sky. So I'm going to need particles for that, obviously, and these particles, what I'll do here, you can see the particles coming from this sphere, and I don't need sphere. What I need, let me just make a couple of changes here. Okay, what I need is a rectangular shape which I can use as the ground plane. So I'm going to increase the size of this, maybe 5. Now we have this ground plane which is upright, so we need to flip that on the ground. Now what will happen as I play this, you will see that the particles are generated, and then at some point these particles will die, and that's because the controls we have here, that we want to generate 10 particles every frame, and they will stay alive for 100 frames. So I'm going to change that. We are going to need particles on the ground all the time and not moving. You know, they should be just static. So a couple of things. One, when we open the shot, we should have some particles here. So for that, what I'm going to do is do the pre-generate frames to 360, because that's our last frame here. And because we are doing 360, imagine that you are at the last frame here. What you will need is the life of the particles also 360 from this point on, so it should be at least twice the length of the shot. So I'm going to do something like 800. Now we have too many particles here because they are coming from the 360th frame, and these particles are alive for a long time, so they're all coming up here, and we need to change that. So the very first thing I'll do is, on the very first frame, I'll change the number of particles to something like 0.5. Now each particle here will be where the leaves will be, so you just want to know, you know, what dense area do you need for your shot, and then you can change the number of particles. Now the problem still is that when I play this, the particles are still born at every frame, and we just want particles to be born on the very first frame but not thereafter. So I'll animate the number of particles, and then the very next frame I'll bring them down to 0. So now particles are not born at the second frame on. Only on the first frame the particles are born, and they are going to be alive for the whole shot, right? So these particles are not moving now as I scrub through the timeline here. Alright, so that's one thing we need. The second thing obviously we need would be the leaves. So I have a few examples of leaves. These are just the PNG files that I'll bring in quickly. I'll bring maybe 3 of them, and one more. Let's bring this one here. Alright, so we have 3 images, and we have particle system here. The particle system is a 3D system, as you can see, and these images are not. So we need something that would take the 3D shape out of these images, and that would be image plane or a 3D shape in the form of an image plane. And I'm going to make 3 copies of this, Control C and Control V, and apply this to each one of them. And let's just view this one, for example. Now here you see that this image plane is there, right? It's in an upright position, but it's still there. And you see this edge around the leaf, and that's because we have not done the post multiplication by alpha, and we should actually do that on all of them, although I don't think it's a problem for the other images. Alright, so that's one thing. And the other thing that you notice, obviously it's upright, so we need to flip them on the ground to negative 90 degrees, and I'll do the same for the others. Okay, so now that they are horizontal, the other thing that we notice here is that these images are really flat on the ground, and that's not how leaves are. They usually have some sort of a deformation. So we are going to create that by using displace 3D node, and I'm going to save time, just do an instancing of this. So Control C and then Control Shift V, and then one more time, and then apply this image planes to the displace node. And now if you see any of the displace nodes, you don't see any change, and that's because we need something that would drive the displacement, and in our case it would be fast noise. So I'm going to bring fast noise, and let's change some of the settings of this fast noise here. Or before we do that, let's just see how they would behave. So I'm going to connect this fast noise to each one of the 3D displace node. So this one will go here, here, and here, which is the biggest advantage of a node-based compositing, that you can actually do something like this very easily. Now what just happened here, as soon as we connected this displace or the fast noise to displace 3D node, this leaf here, which is on the ground, jumped in the air. So now here you see that it's not on the ground anymore, and that's because the brightness here drives the vertical distance. So I'm going to bring it down so it comes back on the ground, and this contrast is what will drive the deformation here. So if I bring the contrast down also, then perhaps we will be able to bring this deformation in a way that is suitable for our shot, and something like this to me would be fine. Now because we are doing instancing and applying to all three of them, all of them will have the same deformation, which is fine for our case. You may want to change it for your shot. The other thing to notice here is that the level of details that you have in this geometry makes a difference in terms of your deformation. So if you go to controls and let's say subdivision level, you bring it down to 0 or 1, now you have only one subdivision level in the whole image plane, and therefore there is nothing to deform, so you have very flat image. This would be also good to see in a wireframe. So let me just bring wireframe here. So here you can see that this image plane has no wires or no vertices inside the plane. As you increase this size, you can see that the vertices are coming in, and the image is becoming dense with in terms of polygons. And the denser the image, the higher the details that you're gonna see. Obviously, I'm gonna leave it to the 10, which is the default level. This is good for our purposes. Alright, so now let's connect both of these into one node here, which is going to be a replicate 3D node, and replicate 3D node is going to be responsible for bringing these geometries into the places of the particle. So we connect particle to the destination where we want to see all the image planes, and then connect each one of these geometries into the input node. Now if you look at this here, and let's take out the wireframe, you have a dense population of leaves, and this is not suitable for what we had in mind. Now this is happening because these leaves are very big, so the scale I need to bring it down to something like 0.1. So now we have leaves that are right here on the ground, but as you can see, the deformation has changed because we have changed the size of the subdivisions versus the size of this fast noise. So we'll have to bring down the contrast even more to make it suitable for our size, new size. Alright, so now you have leaves on the ground. So if you render this, let's bring in a 3D render node and bring it up here. Now you can see that you have leaves on the ground, and to see it better you need a camera. So I'm going to take this camera and apply it to replicate 3D node to create a scene. And now if I move the camera, so let's just take a look at the camera here, and if I move it out and move it up, so now you can see that you have leaves on the ground. Alright, so that was the first thing that I had in mind to show you. Now the second thing that I'll also build here would be, how do you actually make some of the leaves falling from the top? And I'm going to use the same structure here and just copy it so that we don't have to rebuild it. There are only few changes that we'll have to make a motion here of the leaves. Alright, so let's copy all of these, and I'm going to build them here. And let me just connect this replicate 3D node to the scene node. So now we have all of these leaves also showing up in our scene. What I need first of all is these leaves to be up above. So let's look at our particles and where they are. They're on the ground, so I'm going to lift them up, and you can see on the right hand side that they are actually moving. All the particles and all the leaves are moving. So I'm going to leave them up outside the field of view. Right, the next thing we need is particles to come down. So we need velocity, and now when I change velocity here, you will see that velocity, you will see the particles are going sideways, and we actually want them to go down, so the angle will have to be -90. Now the particles are coming down and the leaves are coming down, but the problem is that as I go through the timeline here, all the particles will fall, right? But then there are no new particles generated here, which is not appropriate for this node structure here. It was fine for particles that were on the ground, but here we really need these particles to continuously coming down. So for that, what we'll need to do is go to the controls and then number of particles at every frame and remove this animation. So now 0.5 particles will be generated at every frame. So now if I play, and let me just change my settings for render node here from software to OpenGL so we can have a faster feedback. ZBuffer is fine for now. We will change it in the next exercise. Alright, so we have these leaves coming down continuously, and that's fine. They're all coming down at the same pace, which is not suitable. So what we'll do is have the velocity variance here so that the leaves are not falling at the same pace. Now you can see that some of the leaves are actually falling faster and some of them are actually falling much slower. In fact, it looks like some of them are actually going up. So bring it down. Alright, so now that we have that set, the second thing we need is some tumbling of the particles. And unlike Maya, where you would do the tumbling and spinning of such node structure inside of particle system itself once you instance the geometry, in Fusion it's different. You need to do that at the geometry level and not at the particle level. You have the rotation and the spin control in the particles, but they will not affect the rotation and the spinning of the geometry. So for that, what we will need is a transform 3D node, and I'll bring one here and we just stop playback, and I'll apply this to the first one here. And then what I'll do, actually let me just do a 3 copy. I was gonna do instancing, but we are going to need different tumbling and one here. So we have these 3 transform 3D nodes which will be responsible for tumbling and spinning of the geometry. So what I'll do is I'll go to frame number 0 or 1 and then animate this whole group and change the values to some ridiculous amount randomly, and go to 10th frame maybe and bring the values in the other direction again in a very random fashion. I'm not doing anything here by any sort of calculation, and I'll do the same thing for the other 2 groups. So let me just quickly do that. Alright, so now that we have them tumbling, what we need is a continuous tumbling here. If you go to the spine control or view here, you will see that our transform 3D nodes, they are animated here between these two frames, but then they are flat. So we need this behavior continued. And the other thing is that this is very sharp. We don't need such a sharp change in values. What we need is a very smooth tangent. So what we'll do first is highlight all these points that we need to change, and we will tangent smooth, and then also do the ping pong should be fine, so it will just continue in the range that we have here. So let's go back to frame number 1 and then play. Now you see that some of these things are tumbling and coming down in a very synchronized way, which is really not ideal for us. So what I'm going to do is take the replicate 3D node, go to the jitter function, and I'm going to do some rotation jittering here, which will create some randomness into the rotation. This is exactly how I did my leaves that I showed you just a few minutes ago. Now, one other thing that we can probably do here is maybe this 10 frames wouldn't be ideal for us, so let's just increase this a little bit so that the animation is not quite that fast. And let's go play again. Yeah, so now you see that there is some more natural flow to the way they are tumbling and falling. And again, you can also apply any other force that you need here. For example, if you had wind, you can bring in directional force, or you can just do turbulence by introducing some X strength, some Z strength here, and some higher density. And you will see that these leaves are randomly coming down as if they are fighting against the atmosphere to come down to the ground. Now, one thing is bothering me, that this leaf here particularly is green. Green leaves don't fall in the fall season, so I'd like to do a very quick color correction, bring it to more red. So there you go, that's your falling of the leaves, and all using Fusion Particle System. So in the next video, we'll walk through the couple of examples that I showed you earlier, the Harry Potter chess, and then thereafter we'll look at the driving shot. Thanks a lot.